What do we do with struggling closers like Mason Miller and Raisel Iglesias? And are we buying in on Andy Pahes' hot start? We're telling you who to trade for and who to trade away on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino, here as always with my brother, my co-host, my partner in crime, Matthew Wane. And if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, you that little bell below. It's going to subscribe you to the channel and give you a notification every time we drop a new episode. Or if you're listening on the audio side of things on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we would truly appreciate it if you could do that for us as well. And lastly, what's most important to Matt and I and you guys, give us a chance on the Insider Track. On the Insider Track, you're going to get exclusive access to Matt and I, and you're going to get text message alerts right to your phone, giving you prospect call-up updates. And when we do our waiver wire episodes, we're going to rank those guys for you and tell you how you should prioritize them. And guys, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And all right, guys, trade forward away time this week. And listen, we always have some struggling all-stars that you need to go out there and get. And we got a couple closers up here up top. Matt, who are we going with first today, brother?
All right. Well, let's start with probably the most surprising failure so far last month. Mason Miller posting an 8 ERA over the last 9 innings, and it's pretty much over the last month, has shown some improvement over the last two innings, save 5 Ks, a 3.86 ERA with a 1.71 whip. And when I say improvement, it's just not an 8 ERA. It's just been real interesting. Even in his last outing against San Francisco, didn't finish the inning and had a 4.5 whip. Like, that's just ugly. Got himself in trouble the week before against the Yankees. 5.4 ERA. Did get the save, luckily, but still gave up some runs. And then, the 2 whip, the 6 whip. It's just ugly and got lit up incredibly against Miami with a 67.5 ERA. Like, things have just not looked good for him on the mound, and I don't know what the struggle is. You look under the hood and you see his fastball's a little bit flat. You see the off-speed pitches are a little bit flat. Getting great, breaking ball movement, but that's really about it. Even though his xERA is really showing a 3.15, the X batting average is a 1.67, even though he's getting lit up at the wazoo. But this is a whole, 2-month scheme versus just the last couple weeks. Things just haven't looked great. He's giving up a lot of hard contact because the average exit velocity is sitting at almost 90 miles an hour at 89.6 miles an hour, walking guys at a 13% rip, allowing guys to barrel 20% of the time, and creating hard contact against him 56% of the time, and not really supplanting that with ground balls. These are all things that are really just bad. Now, what does this say? How do I handle this? Am I actually trading for him? And the question is yes. Look, the talent just doesn't disappear on a stud like this. We saw what he did last year and how he was able to, be successful. I mean, you look at last year and what he did, where he had a sub-3 ERA at a 2.49 ERA through 65 innings. He had a grand total of 28 saves and had 104 strikeouts. He is the prototypical, top end closer, well over that K per inning, and a guy that's getting saves on a team that can get saves, because I actually think, the Athletics are a good team and can provide save opportunities, unlike in the past. And Mason Miller is the guy going to be closing the door on other teams. I just think this is a little bit of slump. Some things just need to get worked on. It could be a simple flip of a switch and he's back to himself. He's a buy low, but not overpaying either. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm going to try and trade a lower tier closer, and I'm going to try and trade a guy that can kind of, that is overperforming and kind of get that deal done and pushed across the finish line. So I'm trading for Mason Miller at the end of the day, but I'm, again, not overpaying for him either.
Matt, great take on Miller. I don't have too much to add except, I'm with you on him. I think he's a perfect buy low candidate. Oh, we talked about Emmanuel Clase, I want to say like 3 weeks ago on the same trade forward and away episode. He's been a lot better since then. So if you traded for him, worked out. I think it's going to be the same thing with Miller. He's too good not to correct the course here. But Matt, great take. So I'm not even going to add anything else except, go get Mason Miller. And don't overpay. Let's move on to this next closer. It's Raisel Iglesias of those Atlanta Braves. Another closer, he's been on the struggle bus, and it's been a lot longer than the last month. The whole season has kind of been pretty ugly for Iglesias. I got him on a couple of teams. On the year, Iglesias, 19 games, a 5.89 ERA, 18 innings pitched, 20 strikeouts. Only 4 walks, which you really like to see. The whip is at a 1.41. It's just been a lot of hits over that time. For Raisel. He's a career 2.95 ERA guy. He's well over a K per inning in his career, and he has a 106 whip. I know he's a little older at age 35. I don't think he's done yet. That's what I'm going to say. I don't think he's done yet. I think if you can go out there and, pull off a little sneaky trade for, you need a closer, I think he's somebody you could be targeting. I think you could wind up paying 60 cents on the dollar. I know a lot of the underlying stuff doesn't love Iglesias, but I'm not going to let, 19 games define a guy's whole season. Some of the underlying stuff does really look good. Like I said, he's not walking guys. He's getting a lot of whiffs. He's getting guys to chase at, a very high rate. Not giving up too many hard hits, but, a lot of the other stuff doesn't love Iglesias. But like I said, the guy's been an all-star, in the past. He's still, I think, going to be pretty good on the season for the rest of the way. And listen, I think those Braves are going to win some games, and I think Iglesias is going to be getting, majority of the saves for them. So I think he's go out there. Don't like him as much as Miller, but if you can't get Miller, you go out there and you try and get Iglesias.
Yeah, I mean, Iglesias has been good for years. He's just on the, older end of the spectrum in terms of youth. And I don't think we're seeing a true drop off. I mean, fastball velocity is still sitting at almost 95 miles an hour, 94.7 miles per hour. He just has really flat stuff. Breaking pitches are just like completely in the ugliest percentile of one. And his off speed pitches are also flat as hell, but his fastball is looking nice. And that is the key part. We just need to see a little bit more on, produce a ground ball and not allow guys to barrel. And I think we're fine. He's suppressing hard contact. He's only allowing that 36% of the time. And the average exit velocity against him is only 88.8. I would like to see obviously a little bit lower, but nobody's perfect. It's really just you look at, what he's leaning on, and it's his changeup, and his changeup is doing fine. His four-seam fastball is, getting hit, but not, stupendously. It has a 263 batting average with an expected batting average of 247. I look at things and I'm just like, okay, there's room for improvement. And he's on a really good team. Why wouldn't I want a piece for that? So I'm going to try and trade, and I'm going to try and buy low as humanly possible because, why not? And if he's my third closer at the end of the day, I'm going to do it. I'm not giving up anything valuable for him. So it's really about it. But I'm going to move on. I'm going to talk about Dom's boy here, Jack Flaherty of the Detroit Tigers. So here's the deal about, Jack Flaherty. He's been pitching like horribleness the last couple of weeks. Blew up my wonderful parlay I had of 7 pitchers, and he was the only one that didn't hit because he got pulled out in the third against the Rangers, and all I needed was 5.5. But anyway, I digress. But he's been really bad over his last couple of starts. His last one wasn't bad against Toronto. At Toronto, he went 5.5 with 6 Ks, a win, and 3.18 ERA with a 106 whip. But then he went against the Rangers the week before, the one I'm really mad at him about, with a 15 ERA through 3, and was cruising though because he had 3 innings with 4 strikeouts, but gave up 5 runs instantly and got taken out with a 2 whip. Destroyed your week. The week before that against the Angels of all teams too, 6.35 ERA and 5.5, but 8 Ks, 1 bad inning. I'm feeling like I'm talking about Aaron Nola here. And then Houston lit him up, and then he was all right. But then Milwaukee, and it's just been up and down. He had 3 really great starts to start off the season, and then kind of just been up and down and up and down and up and down. And I feel like I'm singing my kids, what do you call it, nursery rhyme song from Coco Melon, but that's a whole nother animal. But I look at it, and I look at the underlining stuff, and it gets me a little concerned, but it also gets me like a little bit of a window of maybe I can buy low and get a stud. So here's the thing. Like, I believe in the talent of Jack Flaherty, and that's what I'm going to bank on with trading for him. Nothing about him screams, hey, he is going to be this game changer. Like, there is risk. There's a world where he just doesn't figure it out, and last year was a fluke. You know, average exit velocity sitting at 90.3, fastball sitting at 92.8, which last year it was a whole mile faster, which is maybe part of the problem. But also, he's getting no movement on his fastball or off speed pitches. It's pretty much just his breaking balls. He does strike out everybody. He just gives up hard contact and then puts himself in trouble. And that's the biggest thing. It's like, okay, man, like, can we not do that? And on top of that, he's already given up 10 home runs on the season. The only thing that really saves him is he's pitching at Detroit half the time. But I'm going to try and trade for him and see if I can get that other half of Jack Flaherty, where I know he's going to strike out everybody under the sun and can, really thrive in Detroit. I think he might have a get right game. This is one of the more riskier guys I'm trading for, but I'm going to do it. And I'm going to just pay pennies. Pennies. I'm not giving up anything valuable. So coming up next, you can hear Dom's side of it. Who he might be pissed off at me from, this whole talk, but we'll see. All coming up next.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you just stop managing your money and start building your wealth. With their surprising insights, when I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. With their easy collaboration, managing your money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. And guys, before we jump back in, do you need that secret weapon, that thing that's just going to put you over the top in your fantasy league and just help you get to fantasy glory this season? Well, if you do, I got the thing for you. Join the Insider Track with Matt and I. And on the Insider Track, you're going to get exclusive access to, prospect call-up alerts, so you can get these top prospects on your team before anybody else in your league. When we do our waiver wire episodes, you're going to get those guys prioritized and ranked, letting you know how you should pick them up. And guys, any questions, comments, concerns that you just want to talk to us, you got us on there on the Insider Track. So check us out there. The link is in the bio, wherever you're listening, watching, and it's available on any of our social media platforms. And all right, Matt, let's jump in. Let's talk some Jack Flaherty. It's my boy. And by the way, Matt is a Jack Flaherty owner. We have him this week. So Matt, you like Jack Flaherty enough to have him on one team. I like Jack Flaherty a little bit more than Matt does, but I'm not going crazy with it because it has been a mixed bag to start the year. Righted the track in the last start. I just feel like through 9 starts, he's got 5 good ones, 4 bad ones. It's a 4.44 ERA, a 1.22 WHIP, 46 innings, 56 strikeouts. So he hasn't been killing you overall. Like Matt said, he had a good 3-start stretch to the beginning of the season. Had a couple mixed bags in there, then 3 bad ones in a row, good in the last one. He gets Cleveland on the 22nd. Hey, Cleveland's been a pretty good matchup for pitchers this year. And I think Flaherty's going to right the ship. I think when everything's said and done at the end of the year, the numbers won't look as good as they did last year, but could he have a mid-3s ERA with well over a K per 9 and a pretty good whip? I think that's fully believable. And right now you don't have to pay that kind of price, because I think the Flaherty owner's looking at the numbers and like, oh, well, this might be a fluke. He might, one year wonder. Even when you look at the underlying stuff, right? If you're a savvy person, who looks into the underlying stats, everything's not crazy far off from where it was last year. Yeah, the fastball needs to be better. The pitches need to move a little bit more, but 9 starts out of potentially 30 plus starts, once again, doesn't define somebody's season. Jack Flaherty, former, I thought he was a former All-Star. He's not a former All-Star. But former great player, Cy Young candidate a couple of years in his career. I think he's worth trading for. Has the upside of an SP3-ish kind of guy. Will he live up to it? Maybe, maybe not, but definitely worth going out there and at least trading for Jack Flaherty to see where it goes, because he has a lot of upside and it's still at least minimal striking everybody out. So go out and grab Jack Flaherty if you can. All right, let's jump into this next guy. Let's talk about Lawrence Butler of those Athletics. Very interesting young player. He was like anybody in the industry darling. Everyone was all over Lawrence Butler coming into the year. Mixed bag so far. It's been decent. 45 games for the young Lawrence Butler, 180 at-bats, 21 runs, 11 doubles, 6 homers, 18 RBI, 7 steals, 17 walks, 49 strikeouts, 228 batting average. Been struggling a little bit more than that of late. I think he's still a young kid that can figure it out. It's going to take time. He came on at the end of last year, was like a house on fire. Finished the season only 125 games, had 22 homers and 18 steals. Hey, listen, he's still on a good power speed pace here, but can he correct the ship? I think he can. I think he's going to wind up being more like a 250, 260 hitter with good pop, a good speed. This athletics team is scrappy. So I think the counting stats are going to still be pretty good for Butler too. It depends on where he settles in this lineup too. He was leading off for a long time. They moved him out of the leadoff spot, moved him into that 5th, 6th spot, back in the leadoff spot for his last 2. And he's had somewhat success in his last 2 games, going 2 for 8 with 2 RBIs, a steal and a run. It's a lot of upside for a kid who's still only 24 years old, is on a very good team, had a monster breakout year last year, has had some success in the minors. On this underlying stuff doesn't look super sexy, but I still think there's a world where Lawrence Butler gets back on track and starts mashing, and then there's no opportunity to go out there and trade for, and even in Dynasty, I'll say this, a 24-year-old, outfielder with a lot of upside. I think if you can get Lawrence Butler in Dynasty leagues right now, I think that's a very, very savvy move. Redraft, I'm probably not giving up as much. If he could pay 70 cents on the dollar, 65 cents on the dollar, I'd do that. But when you're talking Dynasty, 80 cents on the dollar for a guy like Lawrence Butler who could turn around and be potential 25, 28 homer guy, 20 steal dude with some good counting stats and not killing you in batting average, I'd go out there and make that move for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's really disappointing season. I'm going to say that. I'm going to start with that. I will say that I do want to try and acquire him just based off of what I thought and how I ranked him going into the season. It's always worth taking a lottery ticket, right? And you didn't pay the draft price. Now it's time to see if you can go and capitalize and try and steal him from somebody else, because if he bounces back, it's great. It does come at risk, just like what I was saying with Flaherty. It's just, hey, what is that risk worth to you and how much are you willing to pay? Are you going to trade a guy that's overperforming right now that you think you can probably get him, pretty much straight up? Probably not, but you could probably try and package him with somebody else that, probably is a good fit for another team. You do it, drop us a question on the insider track and I'll try and help you with it. It's just a matter of, I got to see your team and know about it, kind of help you with that trade. But I think Lawrence Butler is somebody I definitely want to acquire. I mean, the bright spots are for me, average exit velocity and hard contact. He's doing that at a pretty decent rip. I'd just like to see the launch angle improve, and I think that's the biggest difference maker. But we'll see, because he was pretty good at that last year. But I'm going to move on. I think that, we're in a census. Dom covered a lot of it. I'm going to talk about Dylan Cruz of the Washington Nationals. So Cruz is somebody that I love. He's one of my favorite prospects coming the year. Had a really rough start to the season, and it's reflecting the stat sheet more than we think. But the one thing that is not, really jiving for Cruz is the batting average. In the minors, he was known for his, great plate discipline and his ability to just essentially hit for average. Well, it's not really translating this year. Didn't really translate last year because he batted 218 and so far on the season at 191. But I like the counting stats over the last month: 12 runs, 4 bombs, 10 ribs, 7 stolen bases, batting a measly 200. This last week too, like so far, 2 runs, a bomb, 4 ribs, a stolen base, batting 235. Look, if season numbers look like this, I have 20 home runs, 30 stolen bases, batting 248 with maybe like 80 and 80. I think that's a successful season for Dylan Cruz as a first full season. I think that's probably the trajectory I'm trying to grab. But that means that because we haven't seen much right now, that there's better days to come. There's a better Dylan Cruz. And I'm going to try and get that. He's being dropped in leagues. He's down all the way to 60% owned. So he's a guy that I think is definitely somebody you can acquire, except in those really deep leagues or obviously in dynasty leagues. That's where it's going to be the most challenging. Top 5 prospect, it's going to be hard to let go in a dynasty league or a keeper league. But in those redraft leagues, I'm willing to pay. And if I'm in first, second, third, fourth, and I'm in a comfortable position and I can kind of hold a dead weight guy and I'm not riddled with injuries, I'm going to go and try and acquire him. I'm going to try and pay nothing. Like a guy later, an Andy Pahes. Like I'd probably go after Dylan Cruz and try and get a little something just because I can. People are thinking that this is real. I don't. So, this is why he's going to be on the show later. But ultimately, I'm going to try and move and try and get Dylan Cruz on a cheap discount because I believe in the talent. I believe that he's going to take that step forward. So I'm going out and I'm trying to trade for him. Again, we're met by another break before Dom can go ahead and actually get his start. Well, here's the deal. You're gonna have to wait. You're gonna find out after this, and then we're also gonna start going into who we are trading away, and already previewed it with Andy Pahes and others coming up after this. All right, Dom, do you agree? Do you disagree? How you feeling?
So I like Dylan Cruz. I think he's going to be a good MLB player. I just don't know the trajectory anymore. I don't know if he takes that all-star, superstar path anymore. And that's I'll say this. In a redraft league, if you need steals and you need runs, I think he's somebody you go out there and you target. I don't think for me personally, Cruz is somebody I'm just overall just saying, yeah, you know what, every league, no matter what your team looks like, go out there and target him. I think it's going to be situational for Cruz because the batting average, we talked about it. The batting average is the big thing for me that scares me. Last year, Cruz had 31 games in the big leagues. He had 11 walks to 26 strikeouts. This year so far for Cruz, through 44 games, has one less walk than he did last year, and he's played 13 more games. So I don't like that at all. And he's also struck out 22 more times in 13 more games. So the plate discipline's looking bad. For the underlying stuff, even when it comes to like X batting average, so talking around 255. If he can get up there, that's going to play more. That's going to be if he could be the 20 homer, 30 steal guy. With a 255 batting average and 80 and 80, like Matt was talking about, I like that a lot more. But that might be the upside for this year. I don't think the upside is, him hitting like he did in the minors and just breaking out in every single way. Like I said, in redrafts, if he needs steals and runs, I'd go out there and grab him there. In dynasty leagues, it becomes more of a fun conversation because if you can go out there and pay 50 cents on the dollar for a guy like Dylan Cruz in a dynasty league all day long, do that all day long. But then again, I'm not going to go even in a dynasty type of format. I'm not going to go over the top in an offer for Dylan Cruz. Like I said, maybe 60 cents, 65 cents on the dollar. I would do something like that, but not going to. Yeah. See, even if you guys are watching on the tubes, Matt's pointing down. Like I said, 50 cents on the dollar is going to be the sweet spot. Anything more than that, you're getting into questionable territory. But the kid does still have a lot of upside. He's only 23 years old. He's playing for this national team that has developed a lot of good prospects in the last couple of years. But guys, let's switch this thing over. Let's start talking about guys. You need to get out of here. Get him off your team now and trade him to somebody else before the other shoe falls off, right? And first up is Mr. Nathan Eovaldi, one of the return players to this podcast. Talked about him earlier in the year, and guess what? He is still doing it. But listen, I'm doubling down here on Eovaldi, guys. We know who he is. The guy is 35 years old. He's been in the league for 14 years. He has never had a season with under a 3.39 ERA, and that's all the way back in 2013. Since then, you're talking about a guy who's a high 3 ERA kind of guy, usually under that K per 9. There have been a few exception seasons where he has gotten over that K per 9, but not of late. And he's usually at least acceptable in whip. So you know what? The whip is something he will probably maintain being successful at. But I don't think the over K per 9 stays. I don't think the obviously under 2 ERA sticks. So there's worse days ahead. This guy Nathan Eovaldi is not going to be as good as advertised for the rest of the season, right? He's pitching for those Texas Rangers, in case you didn't know where he was at these days. But I say get him, sell high. Sell as high as you can. Whatever you can get, I'm probably doing that because the rest of the way, it's going to be an over 4 ERA if he returns to the mean, right? If his last 5 seasons say anything about him, he's a 3.65 to a 3.8 ERA kind of guy. And that's where he'll end up. And to get to that, he's going to have to pitch a lot worse than he is doing now. So I say get Eovaldi off your team. There's also the chance he gets hurt. He hasn't been the exact picture of health throughout his career. And at age 35, I don't put it past anybody getting hurt. So I'm out on Eovaldi. Sell him while you can.
Yeah, I mean, great take. Eovaldi also just goes through stints where he's super fantasy relevant, and then he kind of just like dies, and then he just goes into baseball relevancy. He does exactly what he does now. He's a perfect sell high candidate. He reminds me of Adrian Gonzalez, Mr. April. He was always good like those first like 2 months, and then he'd fall off a cliff. So it's the same thing like Eovaldi. You get started and then boom. So trade him. Great take, Dom. I'm going to move on. Let's talk about Kevin Gausman of the Toronto Blue Jays. And we talked about him earlier in the season, and this may be like, the roughest time to try and sell high on him, but I think people are probably buying him because of what we've saw in the beginning of the season that got everybody hot and bothered. As he looked like, okay, Gaussman is back. Looks like that 2023 form, but it's been a little rough up and down. The last two starts have been kind of ugly, but he's a guy I want to try and get off my roster that has a name. And I don't think you're going to be able to trade him straight up. That's the biggest thing, right? Like the last couple of performances and season total numbers are not as sexy as they were when we were first telling you to trade him. You probably could have got peak value for that, right? Now we're kind of just trying to sell before all the value's gone. So now he goes from being a guy you probably could trade for directly for a high-end player to now a guy that you can, push him over the line. And that's really where it is. Look, I will say this. His fastball is back to that 2023 level. He's looking good in that, and he has great movement on his fastball, and he's getting decent movement on his off-speed pitches. But, he's just not totally there. He's still giving up hard contact at an amazing rate, almost 91 miles an hour. He's not creating whiffs or getting strikeouts like he was. And the hard contact is happening 44% of the time. And he does not have ground balls to suppress it. So I'm trying to get rid of him and get whatever I can. So I'm going to sell the name. I don't think I'm going to be able to sell the player and the current stat sheet. So what I'm doing again is putting him in on the trade to help the needle move from, a maybe tentative to a yes.
Matt, I'm with you on Gaussman. I really don't even have too much to add, except you go to the old head in your league. You go to the guy who's been around a while and remembers the good old days of Kevin Gausman, and that's what you do, Matt. You nailed it perfectly. He's a guy you're going to package in another trade, and he's going to be the guy you try. Oh, yeah, let in Kevin Gausman, that type of thing. But Matt, perfect take. I don't have anything else to add except sell. Let's move on to this next guy. Matt, you mentioned him early, Andy Pahes of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Man, has this kid been absolutely great so far. 44 games, 280 batting average, 23 runs, 9 homers, 27 RBIs, and 5 steals. So the thing with Pahes is he's good. Don't mistake what I'm saying here. He's a good player, but I don't think he's this good, and I don't think he maintains it throughout the rest of the season. The underlying stuff kind of backs what I'm saying here. Ex batting average around 254. He's not really hitting the ball too hard. His average exit velocity isn't great. And just a lot of other stuff. He's chasing a lot. He's not whiffing a lot, but chasing a lot, striking out a bit too much, not really walking a crazy amount. He is very fast, so I will say the steals are legitimate. I don't think he keeps up this pace. And the Dodgers, don't forget, they have a bunch. They always have a bunch of top prospects right in the wings, waiting to come up and snipe the guy that's ahead of them. So with Pahes, I would definitely sell. I'm not giving him away for free. Is a 24-year-old, semi-top prospect who, could be somewhat legitimate here in the bigs. But listen, if you can go out there and, snag like some of the guys we talked about earlier, I would definitely acquire a Lawrence Butler for an Andy Pahes, of course. A Mason Miller, yes. Other guys we talked about, maybe a little bit on the iffy side. But you know what? For guys like that, just a couple of examples what you can go out there and try and accomplish in an Andy Pahes trade at the moment. Like I said, there is a chance that this kid is somewhat legitimate. But I just don't think he's this good. I think, the power, slacks off a little bit. The speed might come up. And I think the batting average is something that also comes down a bit here for Pahes.
Yeah, I mean, they're like his underlining, we call it stats, right? Like, I guess like his savant page, like his profile right now, where like a guy that doesn't hit the ball hard, we've seen where like, okay, you've seen players be successful with this kind of prototype, right? Where you look at like a Marcus Semien, for instance, a guy that doesn't crush the ball at all, but has really good line drive numbers, can get the ball over the fence. But, he's just, but also that comes with great plate discipline that Pahes does not have. He's striking out over 30% of the time right now. And it's eventually going to carry over into a negative scheme for your fantasy team. The reason why we're talking about it is he's hit 7 home runs this month and is the number 8th player in ranked right now for the last month. That is where you sell high. It's going to die. It reminds me of Eric Thames. Eric Thames had an amazing first half.
Man, that's a deep cut.
Right. Remember, it reminds me of Eric Davis had a great first
Remember
half.
Kings, yeah.
Yeah, I remember Berries that kick it in. But the first half was like incredible. You go to the All-Star break, and then did you forget how to play baseball? Like that's what truly can happen. I'd rather sell high, and man, could I have sold high that year? I was definitely not as wise as I am now. So sell high on Pahes. Well said, Dom. Let's talk about Dansby Swanson. I want to get this in quick. I am not a believer in Swanson whatsoever. Look, we're seeing some remnants of the good old days, but we're not in good old days anymore. He's 31 years old and he hasn't been relevant for fantasy baseball in a little bit. I think since being on Atlanta, I think it's kind of gone away, and he pretty much played for a contract because he's never been that a world beater since the last 2 years on the Braves themselves. And again, it was all for a contract, whether to get re-signed or to get paid on another team. Look, he's been great the last month, 6 home runs, but you look at what he did last year, where he had 16 home runs on the season, and now he already has 10 on the year. I'm not seeing it. I mean, the pace is well outside of what he normally does. Even in his prime years, the most he's had is really 25 and 27, those 2 biggest years. I'm just not buying into it. The pace is too unsustainable. I'm selling him, especially in a market where shortstops are kind of thin. But yeah, that's all we got because we're running out of time. You're Dom. You got any last minute thoughts?
No, I'm with you on Dansby Swanson. Get him off your team. Trade him.
All right, bet. So guys, please like, subscribe, comment, rate, review, do everything you can to share this show because we truly love doing it for you week in and week out. And we're here for you. So, and when you need a little bit more than what we offer, check us out and become a member of the Insider Track because truthfully, it's so much more fun that way. But when you're done with that, check out our boy Sully over at Locked On MLB. But peace out, guys.
So.